Welcome. I'm Memory, and some things are better left forgotten. Some stories in the game stay on the surface. Others get picked apart by the fandom piece by piece, searching for things that were never officially confirmed. This theory is one of the darkest and most insane ones ever to come out of Reddit, and it involves several characters at once: Lydia Jones, Martha Remington, and even Aesop. To understand the theory itself, let's first go over the backstory. After being dismissed from the psychiatric hospital on White Sand Street, Lydia Jones opens her own clinic, but over time, things start to fall apart. The clinic struggles financially, money becomes scarce, and Lydia turns to illegal procedures. She begins performing underground abortions. It's at this point that Martha Remington enters her story, Lisa Beck's mother and Leo Beck's former wife. During the procedure, a tragedy occurs. Lydia is unable to stop the bleeding, and Martha dies right there in the clinic. Lydia leaves the body behind and flees. According to the official version, Lydia panics after what happened, abandons the body, and runs away. Later, the police discover the clinic, and Lydia is declared wanted. But this is where the theories begin, and the first one is both the most famous and the most disturbing. There's a theory that Lydia never left Martha's body in the clinic at all. Instead, she got rid of it by feeding it to stray dogs. This theory came from an image showing dogs gathered around several sacks. For a long time, the fandom believed the sacks might have contained the remains of unborn children from the illegal procedures. But some players suggested something else. What if the sacks contained Martha's body? That's why this theory is still considered one of the darkest in the entire lore. But there's another theory, less popular, yet far more interesting. And this is where the story unexpectedly becomes connected to Aesop Carl. The designer behind Aesop's character once published an unusual description of him, and it went like this. August 7th, 1888. I received a female body with 39 stab wounds. She was unrecognizable. I opened my suitcase. I trust this instrument with restoration. I worked hard to repair her face. Perhaps, in life, she was a beautiful and wealthy woman. Feeling in her pocket, I found an invitation and another letter. It seemed addressed to her daughter, and it contained a photo. Perhaps, by continuing this investigation, she could have found her. I don't know why, but I decided to do it myself. I must return this letter to her daughter at the manor. At first glance, the description seems like a standalone story. But fans noticed a strange coincidence in the dates. Lisa Beck was born in 1876. Lydia started performing illegal procedures around 1888. And it's exactly in 1888 that Aesop receives the body of an unknown woman. After Martha learns that Freddie Riley had essentially tricked Leo into buying the factory, she leaves him. Later, Martha writes Freddie a letter saying she plans to take Lisa out of the orphanage and raise her together with Aesop. And this is where the theory becomes especially disturbing. At first, the letter doesn't seem like anything more than an isolated story, but fans noticed a strange alignment of dates. Lisa Beck was born in 1876. Lydia began performing illegal operations around 1888, and it's exactly in 1888 that Aesop receives the body of an unknown woman. After Martha learns that Freddie Riley had essentially tricked Leo into buying the factory, she leaves him. Later, she writes Freddie a letter saying she plans to take Lisa out of the orphanage and raise her together with Aesop. And this is where the theory becomes especially unsettling. At the time she wrote the letter, Martha still wasn't planning to have an abortion, but later, she may have changed her mind and turned to Lydia. After her death, her body allegedly ends up with Aesop Carl. Norton's story has always been built around one thing: a desperate desire to become rich. He grew up in poverty and spent his whole life dreaming of escaping it at any cost. One day, an old miner named Benny, a man who once was a friend of Norton's father, shows him a list of 13 mines. According to legend, one of them was supposed to contain gold. For Norton, this becomes a chance to change his life. He starts going from mine to mine, holding on to the hope of getting rich. But every new mine brings only disappointment. When 12 out of the 13 mines turn out to be useless, Norton loses his patience. Obsessed with finally finding gold, he uses dynamite in the last mine. And that's when the catastrophe happens. The mine collapses. All the workers and Norton's colleagues inside are buried under the rubble and die. The only survivor is Norton, and what's even stranger, he only ends up with burns on his face. This is where one of the darkest theories begins, because the Golden Cave map is directly tied to this tragedy. Players started noticing strange details, and that's how the theory about Norton's cannibalism slowly emerged. First, if you look at the map from above, some objects form the word starving. Second, the map once included zombie-like creatures, which made the atmosphere even more disturbing. And most importantly, Norton clearly spent some time underground before managing to escape through a mountain stream. These details made part of the fandom start to wonder, what if Norton didn't survive just by chance? What if, in order to survive, he had to feed on the bodies of the dead miners? The theory spread quickly across Reddit, forums, and iceberg charts. For many, it became a perfect addition to Norton's character. And at some point, the discussion grew so big that the developers themselves started receiving direct questions. Was Norton actually a cannibal? Later, the developers did give an answer. According to their official statement, Norton spent only about 2 days in the mine and did not resort to cannibalism. But even after the denial, the theory didn't disappear. In fact, it stuck even more. Because for many players, it makes Norton's story even more tragic. A man whose desperation to get rich pushed him to a point where even the idea of something like that feels possible. This theory is old, but it's still considered one of the most disturbing in Kreacher Pearson's lore, because the deeper you dig into the story of the White Sands Street Asylum, the more terrifying it becomes to understand who Kreacher really was. Kreacher was born into poverty. From an early age, he lived in a harsh world, where only those who could take by force or trickery survived. To avoid starving, he began stealing. Over time, money stopped being just a way to survive. It became the meaning of his life. And around 1884, Kreacher opens his own orphanage on White Sand Street. At first glance, it seems like a noble act. He takes in poor and unfortunate children, many of whom are sick or disabled. To outsiders, Kreacher looks like a philanthropist, a man caring for orphans and saving them from the streets. But the more information that is uncovered through letters and deductions, the more that image begins to collapse. Gradually, it becomes clear. To Kreacher, the children weren't people. They were a source of income. And this story becomes especially disturbing with the arrival of Robbie and Dolores White. At the orphanage, in Robbie's 2025 letter, it's almost directly stated that Dolores lost her arm only after she had already been sent to the orphanage. This is further supported by Ernest, Robbie's former friend. He recalls the moment he first saw the brother and sister. According to him, when the children first arrived at the orphanage, Dolores looked frightened and exhausted, but otherwise completely healthy. She had both of her arms, but later, Dolores becomes disabled, and that's not the end of it. If you look into Kreacher's deductions, there's a mention of one of the orphans' diaries. In it, there's a disturbing line about Dolores. She was lucky. She only lost her left arm. It also mentions that the children were made to wash bedsheets covered in red stains. These details sparked a theory that horrific things were happening inside the orphanage. That Kreacher may have intentionally harmed the children in order to attract sympathy, donations, and profit. And the most disturbing part is that Kreacher himself indirectly confirms his own inhumanity. In a letter from 2021, he once again recalls Robbie and Dolores. About Dolores, Kreacher literally says that he could have made a fortune from her injury. Later, Kreacher complains that he lost this opportunity for profit when the orphanage was turned into a psychiatric hospital. There, Dolores and Robbie began receiving medication, after which, according to Kreacher, they turned into fools.